Welcome to October here on TFTC with yours truly here. My last name is spelled Nebel. It's not Nubble, it's Nebel. That will probably be the name of my book one day, I'm sure. But if you listen to my episode with pianist Matthew Mayer, we kind of get into that. So some people do go by the shorty. I think as I was explaining in that episode, there was a disc jockey. I don't know if you would call him that, or he was a late night talk show host back up in at WOR in New York back in the day, Long John Nebel. So he went by that. So thanks for using the incorrect pronunciation, dude. And the long E is the right one. So yeah, you go with the long E. I show that to any German person. They say, come on, it's knee, Nebel. Sick of that. Sometimes I just give up and just say, you know what, you're gonna go with that shorty. I can't, I don't have the patience to explain that. Anyway, thanks for joining me here. Today I have Tom Heyman on the program, on the old podcast. He comes from San Francisco. So now we've even gone more further out west. My last podcast episode, the previous one, is with Jock Bartley from Firefall. He's in Colorado. Today we visit San Francisco. Tom Heyman has been around a while, since the late 80s. Of course, he's older than that, but his musical career was kind of taking off around that point. He's on his sixth solo recording. He had been with bands and been doing quite a bit over the years, but his new recording is called 24th Street Blues on the Bohemian Neglect label. So we kind of get into that as to where that came from. Great release. I urge you to check it out. He's a really talented and very prolific songwriter, inspired by many of the people of the day. But being out there out west, he's got a lot of intuition about what's gone down in San Francisco over all these years, and has done a remarkable job on this release. A lot of good tracks, Like a Lion, Quit Pretending, good stuff. So I really I urge you to go out there and get it. We talk about this track called Barbara Jean, which I thought was kind of a Tom Petty vibe, but he's not really going with that. 24th Street Blues, the title track, is just amazing. Really makes this recording just really fabulous. He will perform one of the tracks from that towards the end, and we'll love it. We talk about so much other stuff here and the state of what's going on in the world of music, and in the world of San Francisco. And he's just got an incredible story. He's been all over the country, has gone from car to car, which would be called hitchhiking these days. Just really, really fun discussion. So I hope you enjoy. Good morning or
How's it
afternoon
going?
for you. Or it's morning for you. It's
Oh,
afternoon for
it's
me.
very much morning for me. Yeah, still. Yeah.
Cool. Out there on the West Coast, how is the weather? I always start with that. How is the weather?
It's. I'm not going to complain because most of the summer it's been about 25 degrees cooler here than anywhere else in the United States, which is nice. But it's been a little humid and rainy. I don't know if it's well, it's a beautiful day today,
Oh,
but
good.
I live in a ground floor apartment, so I don't actually. It's very cool in our apartment all the time, so I don't actually know what it's like outside. I can see the sun, but it's always 10 degrees cooler in our pad than any place else. Thank God for that, actually, except for in the winter. So
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But yeah, that weather is just so nice out there. The last time I was out in San Francisco was in 97.
it
And
was a year before I moved here.
yeah, I got a really nice sampling of what was going on there. Fisherman's Wharf, stayed downtown, checked out that Mission District that you so right about. We'll talk about here in a bit. Just gorgeous. Nob Hill really stood out to me as well. It's a beautiful city.
It really is. It's getting it's getting it's getting a kind of a bad rap right now.
Yeah.
It's funny. The situation is what it is. But San Francisco has always had. Uh, there's always been a homeless situation here. There's always been a street life situation here. It's exacerbated here, um, partially because of the weather, because
Right.
it's a place where, you can actually, well, anyway, it's in the spotlight a lot now for all the
Right.
wrong reasons. And it's
Yeah.
really hurt the city actually. It's
It
a bummer.
has, it has, and then it gets knocked for all that over gentrification in Silicon Valley seeping into that, all the tech kids coming in there, and
Yeah.
prices are going up out of the roof.
Yeah. I mean, COVID took care of a lot of that. Meaning, uh, a lot of people were, the work from home situation, a lot of people were able to kind of go back. A lot of people like moved out and bought houses and stuff like that. But it's still it's always been a pretty nuts real estate market out here. So you know,
Yeah, it is,
uh,
and a lot of inspiration for a lot of the, music that you were writing, especially with your latest release.
yeah.
Just it sounds fantastic. I got a good sampling of that, got to listen to it, and I urge everybody to get that wherever you get your music. So, what was the catalyst for this new project?
Now I had a bunch of songs together, and it was time to make another record, sort of. And I had a bunch of songs together, and it's sort of I from time to time I tend to write about my environment, and there just seemed to be a thread running through it. And then um, I released it in this sort of, well, I haven't released it. It's not out yet. Out October 6th. But I wanted to collaborate with my wife, who's a painter, and I'd had a song published in Acoustic Guitar Magazine a couple of years earlier, and seeing the sort of lead sheet in a magazine was like sort of like this revelation, like, oh, that's really cool. Maybe what I'll do is see if I can browbeat my wife into creating some. She's an oil painter. She teaches at San Francisco City College and at University of California at Davis, and
Cool.
she'd been documenting certain things around the city, sort of. And so I got her to. I decided I would turn it into a book as well as a record, and so that was kind of the you want to try and do something that's a little bit different. And I wasn't gonna do vinyl because at the time where it was like right before COVID, the turn times on vinyl were crazy, and I'd done vinyl on two previous records, and you know it's it's expensive, heavy, and
Right.
fragile. And I was like, I'm not going to do it, but I'm going to try and do something else. So I figured I'd offer this book, and then I wound up doing vinyl anyway. So like the moron. So
Yeah, vinyl is tough and a lot of reissues, and those places do get really backed up with so many projects, especially the reissues, because they know
yeah,
that's gonna
I
turn some
was
money.
I was lucky. The place I used and I've used them before, and they're a good company. They do all their manufacturing overseas in a plant that never shut and actually expanded. And so their turn times for not to get too inside baseball with this, but their turn times were astonishingly fast. Caught me by surprise, actually, that they were done so quickly. I was like, oh, okay, so that was kind of amazing. So, you know,
Great to be able to get this and get the vinyl, and I love the artwork with it, and obviously, you have that in your family, so that's even a bigger plus, but gosh, I love getting the vinyl, and you could feel it, and you could just, really take
yeah, I
in the
mean,
lyrics.
if you're a certain age, for me, it's just always being able to hold an album cover and read the liner notes and read who's on the record. And I'm kind of the kind of person who wants to know who mastered the record and where it
Right.
was recorded. And I always would feel gypped if if that information wasn't on that. Like a lot of earlier country records and stuff like that, they'd have these sort of generic, like the players weren't listed on it, because studio players or whatever.
Right.
And uh and and it'd just be some sort of blanket statement on the back of it, and be like, well, come on, man, tell me where this was done, and or how it was done or where it was done. But that's me. I also stay for the credits of movies. So
Yeah, one of the few, and I'm sure the people who worked on those projects can appreciate that as well. But yeah, it's great with the records. But yeah, not always would you get the record sheets with it. REM comes to mind because it's like I don't know what you're saying here half the time.
Hmm.
Man, they're in Athens, Georgia, and it's just like, but they would have these beautiful artwork with it. The
Yeah,
jacket
always.
was
Yeah.
really, and the photography was just astounding. Always. Do you remember the first vinyl that you ever got? First vinyl
Uh,
record you got growing up?
I don't know. I mean, there was vinyl in my house, so my parents had tons of records. So I don't know what the first record I bought with my own money was. I think it was maybe um, I might have the first record I might have bought might have been Captain Fantastic by
Oh,
Elton John.
I love that.
And I love that record, and it had had the great album art on it, that great sort of cartoony cover of him, and like all this sort of crazy detail in it. So that was and I getting his records, that was cool. It was like, oh, uh, Nigel Olsson plays drums, and it's Dean Murray
Right.
on bass, and it's Davy Johnson on guitar, and they're all wearing blouses. It's amazing. So I knew the names of his band. It was like I wanted to know, even as a little kid.
So Elton was one of your first inspirations. I've seen him many times in concert and even on this
Uh,
farewell tour. It just
I don't often talk about him as he's not consciously like an
uh,
inspiration, but he absolutely is. I think about that a lot because the common, and it's like, yeah, it's funny that you should mention that like he was so ubiquitous, growing up, when he just had so many hits, and he spanned, kind of decades in a way, like,
oh yeah.
60s, 70s, and 80s, and onwards, that you kind of take him for granted, but he's a classic. Him and Bernie Taupin is sort of a classic songwriting team, and the songs were always about something.
Right.
And later, I'm a huge Leon Russell fan, and Leon Russell is such a, Elton John, modeled
Right.
himself so much on Leon Russell, that when I started sort of being conscious of, like, of really going for stuff that I was into, that was like the direct line between Leon Russell and Elton John was like super obvious to me.
Did you want to play like Elton John material when you were younger? Did you try to get into the
Well,
piano?
it's funny that you mentioned that. I took piano for about, I don't know, maybe about a year, when I was quite young. We had a piano in our house. My dad played piano, and it was just like there was this thing. It was like, hey, your kids are going to take piano lessons, and my older sister took them, and I didn't stick with it. I we all went to this teacher that, maybe she was good, but she wasn't the right person for me. And of course, I wanted to sit down at the piano, and I wanted somebody to show me how to play Crocodile Rock. But
Right.
no, that's not how you do it. And there's a method, and you learn this, that, and the other thing. And Mary Had a Little Lamb, and you work your way towards these classical pieces. And it's just like I found it really uninspiring and stifling, and if I'd had it better, I just wish I'd stuck with piano. I wish, I wish I'd made my parents had made me stick with it. But in a way, it's cool that they didn't. I don't know why I stopped taking lessons. It's unlike them to allow me to give up on something, but I was young and whatever, I didn't like it. And
Yeah.
I wish I had. And yeah, of course, I wanted to play like Elton John, but no, that wasn't on the cards. I don't think she could have taught me how to do it. This particular teacher could have taught me how to do it if she wanted to. It wasn't her thing. It wasn't her method. So you know.
Yeah, that kind of structure, kids kind of resist that. They kind of have to be in control of what their interest is outside
Well,
of
I mean,
school.
I don't think I don't think I had any. I really loved music. I don't think I had any particular um, aptitude for it. Uh, I'm not sure that I do to this day, but some kids would just be good at that, at being shown how to do something and do it and have it. I didn't have it, and the way to get to me, which I learned later, was to teach me what I wanted to learn how to play,
Exactly.
you know. And you know, a good teacher would find out what you wanted to learn how to play and try and teach it to you, along with your you know the lessons that you have to give. But anyway, this I'm not throwing this I'm sure now deceased piano
Probably,
teacher
yeah.
under the bus. She had her method, and she was clearly very successful. She had a lot of students and stuff like that. It was just torture for me.
Yeah, and it usually is for kids, you know, and then you get older and you're like, oh man, I'd be so much better if I just paid attention and got into it. But
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I did learn how to read enough music. You know, that was one of the things, and so I, I can read music on a very, very, very rudimentary level now. So, like, if you throw you know a page of music in front of me, I can pick out the notes on the staff, and that it's not super helpful, but it's a little bit helpful. You know.
so your sixth solo project is coming out October 6th via Bohemian Neglect. Is that
Yeah,
your label?
that's my imprint. Yes.
Very, very apropos for the area.
I
24.
guess, yeah. It was just it was an expression I came up with to describe a friend of mine's teeth. But, that's pure
It
bohemian neglect.
happens.
It's a man. It's it's a wonder he still has teeth in his head. Uh, and then it just seemed like a label name to me. So
That's good. Not good for the heart to have teeth that might be rotting out.
yeah,
It's not good. Not good at all. 24th Street Blues. Obviously, that's 24th Street, so
yeah,
that's it comes from that, and of course the title track as well. It
yeah.
comes from that. So yeah, very very nice. How did that chord structure come about when you were putting together that title track?
You mean like how did I come up
Your
with that chord
melody, yeah.
structure? You know, I just sort of I came up with the chords sort of before I came up with the actual riff and this that's at the top of the song that sort of that
Mm,
and so I sort of had that I sort of had a very skeletal approach to how the song went and and then it sort of sounded like the riff sounded too close to the verse, so I changed it to it. I put a minor chord in it, uh, a minor five chord, and just to give it to differentiate it from the rest of the song. And then the B structure is just it's a trick of just you know it's not a chorus, it's not a bridge really. It's an A section and a B section, and it's kind of in a different key, and it's just sort of a Beatles trick, kind of.
little Beatles inspiration there. I know
Yeah.
it's a little bit of folk inspiration there too. You must have grown up with some
Oh,
folk in the house as well.
huge thing. I refer to this song as sort of maximum Lightfoot. I was a
Yeah.
there's a, you know Gordon Lightfoot was a big he was big around the house. Just because I don't know, Sundown was such a huge album, and it was like a favorite of my parents. And then the Gord's Gold compilation that came out before Sundown that collected all his sort of songs from before he was like a superstar. He was a star, but not a superstar. Um, and so that those two records were kind of really big around the house, and
Hmm. Yeah, I
also like
beautiful. Yeah, he's amazing.
yeah, and so that like the sound of the acoustic guitar, and he's such he's such his another guy. His songs are always about something, and it's he's a wonderful guitar player. So I don't know. It's just like yeah, folk music was a big deal,
Yeah.
for various reasons.
Yeah, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. He was very big there because he was from Canada. Came across
Yeah,
the pond, the little pond known as Lake Erie. So he was
yeah,
huge. I remember just being in the 1972 Pontiac my dad had, and Sundown came out. It was just like
yeah.
so huge. It's just like that. The
It's a great.
memories.
It's kind of a
Yeah,
great. It's a really really great sounding record too.
the whole
It's
thing.
I want to say that that it's Lenny, the guy who was like later became the president of Warner. I don't know if he was a president of Warner's, but it's produced by Lenny Waronker, who was like
I know that name.
the
Yeah,
last of the great record men. He was like an
yeah.
A&R dude who rose to the top of the heap and became the president of the label. And that it's a thing. And it's I think on that record I want to say it's Lightfoot's band is on the record. Like like his band was really good. But I think also Jim Gordon is the drummer on some of that stuff. And Jim Gordon is, he's the drummer from Derek and the Dominoes and all those other
Yeah.
records, and who later on, tragically went insane and killed his mom. But
Oh, jeez. Gosh.
you know that story, right?
Yeah, I think I remember that.
Yeah, yeah,
I hadn't
yeah.
thought
No,
about that in ages. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's right.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And I don't know if he's dead, if he just died, or if he's still alive. But anyway, once again, liner notes. Read them. Read
Yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah. Who's putting this thing together? Who's mixing it? Who's engineering it? It's being a studio
Everybody knows
geek in that
because I'm
way.
a
Yeah.
good fan, and here I am talking about him, and just sort of that picture of him on the cover of Sundown. Sitting amongst the hay bales, with his guitar, with the big sunburst guitar, and I think he's smoking a cigarette.
I think
Like,
so. Yeah, yeah. Totally
he's
normal in those days. Yeah. It was around my house. Trust me. It's like, oh gosh, here, hold my cigarette. I was like 9 years old holding my mom's cigarettes. I remember my nose, I feel like it was on fire. It was just so part of the culture in those days. Yeah, yeah. So, I noticed on who's been producing your album. How did you have you always worked with Mike quite a bit? Is it Kirkendall? Is that how you would say his name?
I didn't say his name. So I moved to San Francisco in 1998, and I met Mike. He had a band called the Old Joe Clarks, and they were on a label that I want to say was from Cleveland, but it might not have been. They were on a label called Checkered Past, which was sort of, I think I want to say it was the dude broke away from Bloodshot Records, and so it was like, I mean, he was like kind of amazing. We struck up a friendship. He was a really good, unique songwriter. And then the year that I met in '98, the year that I got here, we became friends. And then he saw the writing on the wall and knew that he'd never be able to afford a house in San Francisco. And him and his wife moved up to Portland, and he really established himself there. And he got really well known as a sort of a producer, because he made this record for M. Ward called The Transfiguration of Vincent, which became like a really big record. And that led Mike to being in Matt Ward's band, and sort of being his MD. And so here he is, he's in this band that, that's on the Tonight Show and Jimmy Fallon, and that led to
Oh,
him producing She and Him, and a bunch of other like great Portland bands. And he just had Mike has like a recording aesthetic that's kind of amazing, and he's also a terrific multi-instrumentalist. He could play a lot of stuff. He's a great drummer. He can play piano. He's a terrific guitar player. He can play bass if he needs to. His own records, there's nobody playing on his records except him. And so I made a record with him back. I always wanted to make a record with him, and it like in a unique setup. Like his house is a recording studio, much like the way Buddy Miller's is in Nashville. The loft of the house is the control room. The living room / dining room is the tracking room. There's a piano. There's like a snake that comes down from upstairs that you can plug all your stuff into.
nice.
The expensive microphones are in the living room. And so I made a record with him called That Cool Blue Feeling in 2014, and it was just the most positive recording experience I'd ever had. We did it really fast. It was me and Mike and my friend Rusty Miller, and Rusty is another multi-instrumentalist. He can play a lot of things. So the three of us were able to just do it. And so it was like no one's sitting around waiting for somebody to do their part or anything like that. You're getting
Okay.
songs past. This one, you know, so I made that record back in that came out in 2014. Then I took a side trip to my next record was my experiment with going back in time to rep my pub rock background, playing a lot, like trying to make a rock pile type record. And then I knew I was making another, you know, mostly acoustic record, and I wanted to do it with Mike again. It was a lot harder this time for various reasons, mostly because the songs were newer. I hadn't played them a bunch. I was still trying to figure out how to play them. And then there was just some other stuff that happened that just made it seemed, you know, it wasn't as easy where everybody's older. But it was still, it was like it was like a great experience. I'm really happy with the way it came out. It just, you know, you don't often have like the first record I made with Mike. It was just like so easy. This was just, it was just harder. The material, it was harder. You know, everything was a little bit more difficult about it. But I think it came out great. And you know, there were just some really serendipitous moments.
Do you listen to yourself back quite a bit? Sometimes it's hard for people to hear their own voice back, whether speaking or singing. It's just human nature, I suppose. Do you listen to your material back as much as like maybe some other artists, or maybe not much at all?
You have to, when you're making a record, you have to listen to it back. You have to, you know, you have to listen to it, and it's torture.
Yeah. That's yeah, it's a necessary evil. It's like, oh my gosh, I like, you know, when you record something, it's like, my voice, I don't know. It's like, but I think that's very normal if there's like an auditory experience like that. So I mean, I've known of a lot of artists like, I can't stand it. I just want to just move on and have somebody else mix this for me. By the way, you have a great mixer on here, Scott Hirsch.
Yeah.
Did you know him for a long time?
Well, I was in a band. Scott and I were in a band called the Court and Spark from San Francisco, and it was a fairly popular band. And the Court and Spark morphed into a band called His Golden Messenger, which are kind of pretty big right now. They're on Merge Records. They're a terrific record, a terrific band. And um, Scott was a member of His Golden Messenger, and sort of still does a lot of production stuff for them. So he's a killer producer, engineer, and also he's a solo artist. We're good friends. I knew that I wanted him to mix the record. He understands my aesthetic, and I knew he would bring something else to it as well that, you know, I wanted an X factor, and I stayed well out of it. He got the mixes, and it was just, I trust you, do your thing. And it was Scott who did stuff like adding the Leslie effect to my pedal steel on 24th Street Blues, and other cool things. You know, it was like, oh yeah, that's exactly right. That's why you got the job, because you would like that, you know. So
Yeah, you passed the audition for sure. That's fantastic. Standout track to me, it's just amazing to me. A standout track to me is Barbara Jean. Is this a character that or a mixture of people that you've known, and
not
just that's how
really.
you wrote it?
Well, I mean, Barbara Jean's not a real person, and but it was inspired. It was inspired by this is so my mother-in-law around 2008 was diagnosed with, well, she wasn't you don't get really, she had dementia. She
Mhm.
lived in Folsom, which is about 30 minutes uh, east of Sacramento. And so for the first several years that she had that diagnosis, my wife and I were driving from San Francisco up to Folsom a lot, because we resisted taking her out of her house for as long as we could. It wasn't going to be an easy thing. So it was this incredibly hard thing, and it's a thing that people go through, taking care of someone who is incapacitated either by dementia or some other form of illness,
Mhm.
and we don't have, and it just does things to people. So I used that as a framework for this song. How like a family illness can sort of completely upend your life, and you go from being a child to your parent being the dependent. And so I used my experience of of dealing with that, through my wife, who did, I don't want to say that I did more than I did. It was an incredibly taxing experience for
Right.
her. So I used that experience as sort of as a framework for the song. Hopefully that's obvious in the song, that it's about that.
Yeah, yeah. I get a little bit of a Tom Petty vibe in some of the work too. Have you really gotten into him? He had talk about San Francisco. I listened to a lot of that material that he recorded there. His
Bill
One
Morrison.
Night Stands. Oh my gosh.
I love Tom Petty.
Yeah.
I don't acknowledge him as an influence just because he's just kind of there. Meaning it's like, if you turn on the radio and he's there, of
Yeah.
course. And so I'm not thinking about him when I'm making something necessarily, but certainly the way he's the fact that he's not making records anymore is
Oh,
is that he's gone, and we don't have this, like this thing anymore, making these amazing records is such a tragedy. you know
yeah, yeah. It just hits you. I mean, it's like, wait a minute, he's gone. Because he produced so much when I was growing up and well into my adulthood. It was like he's so busy. I mean, he works so hard and
that
just
and
constantly.
when you like the radio sort of went away for people his you know of his stature. It just sort of became not a thing anymore, and it didn't stop him from continuing to make records and continuing to make like kind of just killer records, like way past his hit making days. And just like there was just as much care and effort going in. Like Mojo is such a great
Yeah.
record. uh yeah, I mean, I he's the best. The
Yeah,
best.
amazing. Amazing. It's like comfort food. Every time I just put them on like Spotify or something in the playlists, like, why, it just really, really hits very, very well. So,
Very
yeah.
artists do the thing that he did that was kind of amazing, was that lyrically he would do a lot with not very much. Like, meaning there sometimes his lyrics are almost like Zen koans. There's like there could be so very little in them, you know,
Right.
and they just have such an impact. Um, there's a bunch of songs like that where it's like, oh, there's a story there, and it's sort of sketched out in such a minimalist way that it's kind of amazing. Um, I
Mm.
mean, a song like Southern Accents, it's just
Just, yeah, amazing.
that's
Great, great release. Yeah. Yeah,
a
for sure.
song like that, and you're done.
Yeah.
You're, you know,
Amazing. Well, you have a great song about the Mission District, and there's a huge story behind that. This place had three fires total over time. Obviously, one big one, and then they sparked a few fires after that. But
I'm not
that's heavy
sure what
song.
happened, but yeah, it was boarded up. It was up for a long time before it got torn down. Before they finally had to tear it down. There were a couple more smaller fires in it. I think people like were getting in and trying to strip out whatever was left. Yeah, it's a scar on the it's across the street from where I work, from the bar that I work at, and it's just a big empty field now. You got a wrought iron fence around it. Uh, it's grass growing. It's like a whole. It looks like it's like that thing where someone's like somebody's smile is missing a tooth. There's just a big like in front. It's
Right.
what you walk it. There's just this empty thing there, and it's the length of a block. It was a very deep building. It took up the entire, from the front to the back. So, you can look straight from Mission Street through to Bartlett Street, the street behind it. And, there's a little pond that has frogs in it, when you can hear them at night. Uh, it, the tragedy is people being displaced and businesses being displaced, and everybody that was in that building was supposed to have the right to return. There's some sort of development that's going to go in there eventually. Uh,
Mm,
but people will have moved on with their lives at that point where it's there. Nobody's going back to that building, I don't think.
yeah.
None of the original tenants are. I hope that somebody tries to claim. I hope that legally somebody tries to claim their right to go back at the rate, at the market rate, that not at below market, at what you're supposed to be able to return at the rate that you were paying. But these
Yeah.
things don't often work out,
Yeah.
especially it happened in 2000. The fire was I think in 2015. So, it's 8 years ago, and it's gone. Everything is, everybody's moved on with their life. So,
Right. And that's what they hope for. Like a big corporation could come in there, put some gentrification in there, shops, retail and residential mixing. That's very big everywhere. But yeah, especially there,
I mean,
they say that.
it was before it burned down. It was the first the two the ground floor and the second story were all businesses. So the ground floor was a big market with a fish market and a meat market, and
Mm,
various other types of things, a flower market, office. And the second floor was office space. The accountant, the acupuncturist, the
mm,
travel agent, this, that, the other thing. There was a clothing store in it, and a taqueria, and it just all that. So it was mixed use, and there was a Popeyes fried
the
chicken,
Popeyes. Maybe is that where the fire started? Did they know, or just it's inconclusive?
electrical fire. Um,
Electrical. That's yeah. Hey, hearing that, they rip things down. Uh,
I I I don't want to say anything about it,
yeah,
because really, well, nobody knows exactly what the deal is. Arson is a extremely hard thing to prove.
it is.
An arson. It was a fire. It was
Yeah.
um, there was oftentimes there's some neglect involved when things like that happen. So, and also things like that just happen. So
Yeah. You captured it well in the song Mission on Fire.
it
Very
happened.
well recorded.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Thanks. Uh, it 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 that was probably the easiest song on the record to write.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Seems to make sense. Yeah, that's, you're just it's something that you're writing what you know. So yeah, that comes to you a little bit easier than some of these other images that you're coming up with. I love like the ending has this really cool sound effect and you have a little bit of
that was
feedback.
that's all Scott.
I love
That's
it.
yeah, and he just really went for it, and it just really it came out great. And it's my
Very well
old
done.
friend from Philadelphia, Mike Brenner, playing lap steel, various lap steels on it. It's kind of a section. He's playing like a baritone steel and a couple of other things, and so on the record, I play most of the pedal steel. I play all the pedal steel, and Mike plays steel on two songs. He plays on "The Mission Is on Fire" and he plays on "Barbara Jean." And I was sort of at that. I got to a point where I was um, a little bit. I wanted to get out of my own way and have somebody else's voice making those sounds. So, and Mike he's great. Um, I've known him for a long time. He's just a wonderful, wonderful player, a real virtuoso.
Yeah, you were in Philly. Now, how did you get to Philadelphia? It sounds like you've been in a lot of places. I think
Uh,
you were in central Maine and then you ended up in
I was in
Philadelphia.
Maine. I grew up in New Jersey. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. Both my parents are from Brooklyn. Um, grew up in New Jersey. Went to college in Maine. Started my sort of professional career with a band called Go to Blazes. We made a whole bunch of records, and we wound up in Philly. The band kind of started in Washington D.C. for no good reason, sort of the family connection, and then we wound up in Philadelphia because we had some friends there, and we realized you could get a house very cheap in Philadelphia, and it was very centrally located and very easy to get around. So we made a bunch of records while we lived in Philly, and sort of the career sort of started there really, and and so it was just that's how we wound up in Philadelphia, and it's still one of my favorite cities. It's an absolutely great city. I just had to leave when I had to leave because I had to leave.
Yeah, sometimes yeah, that's how bands are. It's like, okay, it's time to move on. I want to go solo and just explore other things, or maybe even come back together. It's always interesting to see the trajectory of that as that occurs. So, and then yeah, you went out west.
Yeah, I mean, I chasing a love affair sort of, and also needing to be not uh to not be doing trying to do my own thing in a place where everybody knew me. I felt like I felt like I had to do it away from, and it was probably a very very mistaken thought. But I just felt like I needed to do it somewhere else. I needed to reinvent myself, and going, however many thousand miles away was a good way to do it. So um, here I am.
Why not?
I've lived here longer than I've lived any place now, and it's funny.
Yeah, 25 years in San Francisco, and you've probably seen a lot of changes in the quarter
I
century,
mean,
I'm sure.
I guess if I'd been anywhere, if you're anywhere for 25 years, you're going to see things change. I just happen to be
Sure.
here, and and the world is accelerating really really fast now. It's not just San Francisco. It's just the sort of the rise of the internet and smartphones and everything. It's just accelerated life. It's like it's just sped up. Stuff that used to take time is instant now, and so I don't know where the time went. I don't feel older except when I try to get out of bed in the morning sometimes. Uh, but
It does that too. Yeah, that's for sure.
the fact that we lived in the same house for so long, you just stuff around you changes, and
Sure.
uh, I was never in a place. If I'd stuck, it's funny. I wasn't. Philadelphia changed a massive amount when I lived there. When we moved there in like 1987, maybe end of '87, we moved to Philly. I'm trying to think. I think that was just a few years away from the Move bombing. I don't know if you remember Move, in the city of Philadelphia, dropped a bomb on a house that had a cult in it, supposedly, and burned down a city block of
Crazy
housing. And
story. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was a crazy thing. And Philadelphia was on junk bond status when we moved there. It was, it had all the major urban problems you can imagine. uh, it was a sprawling kind of wild place, and it went through this massive change in the 10 years that I was there, and it's a very very different city. I just kind of left. I wasn't perceptive enough. Like I knew things were changing, but I didn't see it the change in Philadelphia the way I saw the change in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Um, I see it when I go back, uh, but I've been here so long now that you just see things change, and it's kind of it's inevitable. It's the only thing that doesn't change is that things change. So,
Wow. Do you get out on tour very much? Are you playing live pretty much? Yeah, I would assume more in the San Francisco area, staying on the West Coast.
but I hit it pretty hard from around 2000. Well, I've toured with various bands very very
Sure.
hard, and during my life I've got hundreds of thousands of miles on me, but I toured kind of a fair bit from 2015 until um, the end of 2019. A lot of solo gigs. All of my stuff is sort of figured to go that way, because it's just the most economical way of doing things. So, and then COVID shut everything down, and hopefully I'm going to get out as much as I can on this record. Working on that now. But the everything ended in 2020, and uh, um, so to answer your question, yes, I did, and I hope to again.
Yeah, that's about right. I think it's where a lot of people are. COVID was like the divider there. So you were able to, at least some people were recording quite a bit or doing those Facebook concerts or whatever, and people through Venmo were giving them money. So
I
it's
was
like, yeah.
any of that, but I did a whole series of I have a monthly event that I do here in San Francisco called the Sad Bastard Club. It's
I love it. These names.
to curate singer-songwriter. I had one last night, so the fourth Tuesday of every month. Tuesday is scientifically proven to be the saddest night of the week. I can prove it. And so it's like this singer-songwriter thing that I do. And when COVID shut everything down, a buddy of mine and I turned it into a sort of a TV show
Oh,
that's on YouTube. So I had keys to the bar where I work. We went in there, did it, invited guests down, and so it was sing a song, do an interview. I think we did 30. I think we have over 30 hours of individual shows. Our first guest was Peter Case. We had Chuck Prophet. We had
wow.
uh, Paula Frazier from Tarnation, a bunch of other like great people. Kelly Stoltz did one, um, and it was really really fun. It was really hard work, and it's on YouTube. Just look up Sad Bastard Club, and so that's what I did in lieu of a Facebook Live sort of thing with people's name, with comments streaming on the screen. This was shot. It wasn't live. It was filmed and then edited it into like the first the first season. We did it in sort of two seasons. The first season was standalone, like 25 to 30-minute episodes with two guests and an interview, a couple of songs and an interview, and then the second season was much shorter episodes, like sort of 10-minute clips, and it's all it has actual sort of production values and stuff.
Nice. Nice. Check it out on YouTube. Yeah. That's great. And it easily comes up too. And you got a regular website as well, Tom Heyman Music, just
Not net.
dot net.
Not
Yeah.
net. I in my early days of my website stuff, I somehow forgot to renew .com, and now has it, and I have to sort of figure out a way to buy it back from them. So
Happened to Bruce Springsteen as well. He's never been able to get .com. Somebody snagged it in the late 90s.
yeah, it's a
Poor guy.
.com. TomHeymanMusic.com back would be a lot cheaper than BruceSpringsteen.com.
Yeah, it's being held hostage for a couple of million, maybe even a billion, who knows. Yeah. Well, that is yeah, and you got quite a catalog here as well. I like your second record, Deliver Me. That's I was listening to that on Amazon Music, and really really great release.
Yeah, that was uh, it's funny. I'm throwing myself under the bus here a little bit, but I'll say on my first release, it was the best I could do at the time. Deliver Me, I kind of figured out what I was doing. I really had a concept for that record, and I really like the way it came out. It's a long time ago now, but I still play those songs. I think they're good. My friend Sean Coleman was a neighbor. We did it all. We did a lot of it at his house, and it came. He did an incredible amount of work on that record, and I'm still really really fond of it. I wish it had, it came out on a San Francisco label that had some success with a couple of other people. Mine just kind of that record just kind of got lost in the shuffle, and it was nobody's fault. Um, it
Yeah.
just it just didn't. I wish more people had heard it because I think it's really good. I don't, maybe I'm not supposed to say that, but I think it's a good record.
Yeah, yeah. And then some people in TV like some of the material used in the show True Blood and Justified, and I think Damages as well.
Yeah, and then saw the first song of the records in a film called Tammy, which is a Melissa McCarthy, Susan Sarandon
Yeah.
vehicle. So Um, I like to think of that as the only legitimate money that I've ever made in the music business.
It's in TV and movies, that's for sure. Yeah, but people say, "Hey, you're being a sellout," but hey, you gotta make some coin. Gotta put some bread on the table.
There's no sellout in that, man. There's no such thing as selling out.
Yeah,
Show me how to sell out. I will
yeah.
sell tomorrow.
Do it in a second. Yeah, really. You got it's a job. You got to do it. So yeah, it's fun. Do you have any moments to play some material from your new album?
Do you want me to play a song for you? Is that I
Sure,
can?
something that you might not have played before. You're trying to work out before you take it live. Any of the tracks?
Yeah, sure. Let me see. I'm gonna try and get my guitar into
Yeah,
this
we could see
so
how
that
the
not just a disembodied face. Down on 22nd Street, there's a deep hole in the ground. It won't be there much longer now. Man, just take a look around. 'Cause right next door, the gleaming tower stands so clear and stark. 60 people lost their homes, it barely left a mark. Can try and square this circle, but the pieces just don't fit, and the mission is on fire. And there's some people getting rich. Downtown in some panel room, they're looking at the plans, working on the optics now, pouring drinks and shaking hands. You can say, but for the grace of God, calculate the cost. Spain fight the battle when the war is already lost. Someone's sitting on a gold mine, just waiting for the pitch, and the mission is on fire. And there's some people getting rich. Down on 29th Street now, it's happening again. The sirens wail, the buildings burn, flames are dancing in the wind. Folks just go about their business as the afternoon drags on. They're coiling the hoses, another city block is gone. But the smoke will clear, the sun will rise, the birds will start to sing. It's just a simple sacrifice, one more burnt offering. Come the lawyers and the landlords, and you can't tell which is which, and the mission is on fire. And there's some people getting rich. There's some people getting rich. There's some people getting rich.
excellent, excellent. Yeah, that song's a real standout for me. Definitely, it tells a really really good story. This is your sixth solo recording, 24th Street Blues. And it should be available now through your website. And now you can get this on vinyl in this beautiful 60 page book that your
And
wife has
all
worked on.
Bandcamp as well. Bandcamp is the greatest thing ever. It's a really terrific site. I love it. Um, and so you be able to get anything from me on that. The book will be available there. The vinyl, the CD, or a download, or different bundles. Buy them together, save money.
And we could stop into the bar anytime and hear some music, and you can sell some vinyl there as well.
Sure, I should probably have a shop there. Yeah, out of here, Sarah. Check your ID and sell you a slab of vinyl.
That sounds really cool. Well, thanks for stopping by. It was beautiful. I haven't had anybody do music here in a while, and we do a lot of music interviews here. So
It's a little
nice.
weird to watch yourself doing it, a little disconcerting. So if I stumbled a little, that's too much.
That was good. Very good. Well, thank you so much for stopping by. Take care.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Take